we start with our next session, which is a panel discussion on emerging technology, adapting India stack for Web 3.0. And I have with me Raghav Dhanukayar. He's going to be introducing the panel and the moderators to us.
Thanks a lot. Requesting everyone to kindly be seated, please. I'll be shortly requesting all the other panelists to come on stage, but I see that none of them are currently wearing the headphones. So just allow me a minute, please. They're still not wearing the headphones. Yep. But they're not wearing the headphones. We have with us with the headphones on. Yeah.
Check. Hey.
That's okay. Excuse me. Can we check this?
Mr. Parashar, are we audible to you?
I can hear
think
you.
there's a problem with Mr. Parashar's headset.
Yeah, I think it's not
Fixing
working.
that and then,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I can
Okay.
hear you. You will need to turn on your mic. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah. I can hear you.
I'm just asking Reena ma'am. I think her headset is also probably not working. So we're just getting a couple of new headsets.
Check. Okay.
Yeah.
Check.
Can you hear me now? That's the exact theme of our discussion today. Emerging technologies reshaping the fundamentals of financial services. So welcome everyone to the report launch session on this theme. This is a report by PwC and Invest India, and we're glad to have on stage with us Mr. Asim Parashar, who's the partner of financial services at PwC. We have Mr. Varun Sood, Vice President Invest India. We also have a very special guest tonight on this afternoon, traveling from the North Block, Delhi. Director, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Shri Harsha Bhowmik. And we have Ms. Reena Dayal, who's the Chairperson of QETCI. And I'll just, before starting off, provide you with a brief introduction to all the speakers, and then we'll begin with the session. Starting off with Mr. Asim Parashar. Asim's a partner with the Financial Services Advisory Practice at PwC India, with over almost 2.5 decades of experience in advising banking and financial services clients. He leads the digital strategy and implementation for financial services, and he's been advising some of the large corporates, both domestically as well as across some of the larger geographies. And he's led several engagements across global banks, NBFCs, insurance companies, and AMCs. So glad to have you on stage, Mr. Parashar. Mr. Varun Sood is Vice President at Invest India, the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation arm of the Government of India. He's been driving the Make in India initiative at Invest India. The organization is also looking at various other aspects of the government's initiatives, such as Startup India, the Prime Minister's Science and Technology Innovation Advisory Council. And Varun is responsible for devising and strategizing the Make in India initiative across various sectors, BFSI being one of the key sectors amongst those. And he has almost more than a 15-odd year of experience across managing business development, performance improvement, business finance, with a particular expertise in risk advisory and strategy implementation. I'm also a part of the same organization, by the way. We're also glad to have with us Ms. Reena Dayal, who's the chairperson and CEO for the Quantum Ecosystem and Technology Council of India, which is a Section 8 not-for-profit company with the mission of accelerating the quantum ecosystem in India. And she has almost close to 3 decades of experience in creating and deploying innovation frameworks across organizations and working with stakeholders in the emerging future tech areas. She's also associated with the storage networking domain in India earlier, and she's currently focused on the quantum tech ecosystem. And finally, the most special guest of the afternoon, we have Shri Harsha Bhowmik, who's a lateral entry into the civil services, and with almost close to 2.5 decades of experience from the industry. He's a leader on the payments. He's been leading the payments practice with his past experience in management consulting across product strategy, digital transformation across payments, issuance, and on the acquisition front as well. And with stints across projects working with retail banking and various other financial services domain. Currently, he's the Director, Department of Economic Affairs. So thank you, everyone. I will now request Mr. Parashar to provide his opening remarks and key insights on the report.
Thank you, Raghav. Can we move to the presentation? So till the presentation comes up, we are having our own challenges of the technology, but we'll move ahead. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to thank GFF and Invest India for working on this critical aspect and to prepare a report for the emerging technologies. Now, I have seen the era of starting from 2 Mbps network to branch-based automation in financial services sector, and now we are talking about 5G and quantum computing, etc. And these are all theoretical, as I am a mechanical engineer and have studied on the quantum physics part of it. Now, when we talk about this, the financial services sector has been at the forefront of adoption of technology. Now, when we were preparing this report and when we were going in the market, there are so many technology that is being talked about, and you must be hearing about them in multiple forums, whether it is related to intelligent process automation, cloud computing, analytics, advanced analytics, robotic process automation, and so many things were happening. So for us, it was very important to identify at least three of them. One, which is immediate, second, which is medium term, and the third one where we can take a punt, and which is the long term part of it. And we have tried to do this itself. So as we move along, there are three areas in the technology space that we want to talk about. The first one is on the blockchain. Okay, let's hope this works. Okay, fine. So first one is blockchain, and which has been there for quite some time, but use cases are where we are struggling. Now there are use cases in the government to citizen services where there have been success. Hello? Okay, right. And the second one is on edge computing, and which has been in discussion for quite some time. IoT has come back, which is part of edge computing. Can we leverage that? And the third one is quantum computing, which is a new area, which is multidisciplinary. And there are a lot of forward-looking thoughts, but still the use cases, the technology maturity is something which is still to be arrived at. And India has just started on that journey. Most of the research and most of the work is going on in US and China. So that is something which we are looking at it. And when we are talking about the technology, we have found in the last 5 to 6 years that regulators and the ministry, they have been kind of still trying to catch up. So there is implications for them, and they need to kind of coordinate this whole initiatives which are happening in this sector. So we will just give you a briefing in this report, and once our esteemed panelists who are there, and they can provide their insights that how things are shaping up. Now, when we look at blockchain and we talk Web 3.0, now everyone tries to understand. So first level is there, but what is the difference between Web 3.0? Because we never had Web 2.0 coined earlier, or Web 1.0. It was just internet, and we were quite happy with that. So Web 3.0 is something, it differentiates itself because here you can read, write, and you can co-create. That's the differentiation which is happening. It is not being controlled by any central administration. It is being controlled by individuals who are onboarding on this part of it, and this is quite revolutionary in nature. So that is something which we are seeing. And when you look at this particular slide, there are two words which are important. One is permission and one is permissionless. Now currently whatever enhancements and which are being used very aggressively in the market is permissionless, which is the crypto and NFTs, etc. So anybody can join the bandwagon and create something, and anybody can buy, sell, and with the volatility that it kind of brings there. And the central bank digital currency is something which is permission. Somebody has to give you permission, and then only you can join on that part of it. So that is something which we are seeing. So that is one area. There have been use cases. In trade finance, the large 6 global banks had come together to build a platform to something which was going to compete against the SWIFT part of it. But that they joined it, but it never took off. So that was an experiment which has happened across the globe. We have seen a couple of other players joining in and trying to create a platform which can compete against the SWIFT network and make it more efficient and more secure. So that is something which we are seeing. So there are multiple use cases which are coming up, but adoption and the scale and the volume is something which we have still not seen, and it is open for experimentation and innovation. Now, when we look at medium term and long term, now edge computing has been there, and it's like that. I would say it was more in the manufacturing sector. So I'm not sure if any one of you have worked in manufacturing in chemical or fertilizer plants, etc. They used to have these local compute devices on PLC circuit based, where steam and high pressure steam and gases and everything used to flow, and that used to be computed back in the control room, and 2 people running a control room, and a plant is spread across 30 square kilometer, etc. So it was not that the technology was not there, it was slightly less compute intensive, but now that is being brought in with heavy compute. The infrastructure and the hardware is there, with 5G is going to be launched. So there is an immense opportunity out there, and it brings its own challenges, and there are also good theoretical use cases which has come up, but still we'll have to wait that how the adoption happens in the financial services. Now people are saying that you can use it for insurance companies, you can do the surveying, etc. If an accident happen in the high frequency trading, it has already been there, but can it be done at a more localized rather than co-location? We have heard certain cases happening in National Stock Exchange on the co-location of the server. Now can it happen on the device of the broker or the trader who is placing the trade? So those are some of the things which can come up. And there are huge amount of data that you capture at the interaction on the devices. Now can I use those data and take compute at that level itself and give certain which is beneficial either on the product customized to the customer or the interest rate for his lending products? Can we do that part of it? So that is something which we are seeing in edge computing, and we see this will be a medium-term area, and we believe there is opportunity for innovation with the right kind of policy support and incentive that can definitely take off. The last one is quantum computing, and that is one area which is multidisciplinary. It is physics, it is computer engineering, it requires hardware manufacturing, and we are still not there. It is very nascent in our country, and that is something which is forward-looking. And there are certain use cases for it, and some of the concerns which have come up is that currently in banking industry we use RSA token for security, and that is something which is done for transactions which are happening. The concept is that if the quantum computing takes over, then it can break that RSA token in hardly few minutes. Now imagine your internet banking, your mobile banking, security being broken in few minutes. What will happen to the economy? Now that is where the potential on the negative side. Now there are positive sides also of this compute because it's giving you a immense compute power, but the technology is still not matured enough. And I believe Reena ma'am will talk about that in more detail. Now, some of the challenges that we are seeing in the emerging technology, the tech infrastructure upgrade is required. Now, this is something we already have the infrastructure. We have done certain investment in on-premises, on cloud. You have your mobile set. You have your personal compute devices. It will require an upgrade on that part of it. So how this is going to happen? Who is going to build the cost? So that is something which is there. And the second question comes for the customer. Everyone says the customer should own the data, but how much is the customer aware of the data which is going to be used? Does he know about it? He freely gives a photocopy, signed photocopy of his Aadhaar card to open an account or to buy something, etc. So he's more than happy to share it. So what is the perspective on this aspect of it? And there has to be certain focused initiative both from the industry, the regulator, as well as the government to take place. On the edge computing side of it, it's a concept-wise it's very good, but how do I install remotely these devices, this compute at the respective location? Tier 1 cities is fine, Tier 2, Tier 3, how am I going to do that part of it? Now, what will be the business model for that? That is still very unclear, and it will require increased bandwidth, but with 5G coming in place, we believe that this is a possibility that it will happen. And third is the security aspect of it. And the last is quantum computing. Now you will be surprised, in a country of close to 1.4 billion, the target government has set is 25,000 skilled resources in quantum computing in the next few years. Now that is the kind of deficiency or lack of resources available in this area. And coming to the last part of it, where I said earlier that you require the regulators, policy makers to come together to make this succeed. And there are certain areas where we believe going forward, and this report also tries to capture. One is the data sharing guidelines, and there are a lot of talks happening, the privacy bill, the data protection bill, etc. So it's happening there. So that's one area, how it should be used, where it should be used, who owns it, how you secure it is important. The second is incentives, which has to come up. This particular area, these technologies are not going to evolve on its own. I will continue till the mic comes up. So it requires a lot of collaboration between the industry, the emerging tech hubs, and we are seeing that, like in Hyderabad, quite a few of you will be aware, there is a blockchain hub has been created in Hyderabad. So that is something which is coming up. There is a committee which has been a strategy committee which has been set up in Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology on Web 3.0. So a lot of initiatives are being taken up. So that is something which has to be supported. The third one is cyber security, which is again a catch-up kind of an area. So we are talking about the technologies, but the increased cyber threats are also going to happen. So we need to plan accordingly for that. And the last I would like to talk about is safeguarding the consumer interest. That is one area where we talk a lot. We talk about customer centricity, but I don't think we care much about the customers, especially in the financial services sector. So that is one area which has to be taken care of. So with this, I would say thank you, and we will listen to our colleague panelists also on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Parashar. I'll now request Mr. Varun Sood to please come on the podium and share his insights on the theme and also on some of the initiatives being taken up by the government to drive growth of emerging technologies in the space. Over to you now.
Thank you, Raghav. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure and delight to be here today. For those who are not familiar, Raghav did do an introduction about Invest India. We are the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation arm of Government of India. The key mandate that Invest India has to promote Make in India, bring in more FDI, have suitable policies to create a red carpet welcome for investors, both domestic and as well as foreign, and ensure that any investments get grounded at the earliest and any challenges that they have gets resolved as well. The only reason I wanted to give you a context is because we've been working with a lot of key stakeholders, right from your entrepreneurs to your big companies to foreign partners to domestic partners, in ensuring that the fintech ecosystem or the digital economy, as we call it, India becomes a major leader in the global arena itself. Most of us are aware it's going to be a $800 billion market by 2030. So there lies a huge opportunity where, as you can see, we can see a lot of startups which are there. And it's estimated there are close to 6,000 plus fintech startups which have registered, and it's growing tremendously as well. And that's where government has been supporting them through multiple initiatives. At Invest India itself, we have an initiative called the Startup India Initiative, where the idea is to promote the culture of startup through not just tier 1, tier 2 cities, but at the metros and heart of the country as well. We've been working very closely with a lot of our stakeholders in promoting that particular idea. As all of you are aware, in the last decade, there's been considerable development and widespread adoption of whole fintech in globally, and India has been playing a key element. And that's where government plays a very critical role. As most of you are aware, during COVID, while most of the economy was in slump, the contactless payment was one sector that grew year on year at a very rapid pace itself. There's a very interesting study that McKinsey has undertaken, which says with 10% internet penetration, there's a growth of around 3.9% GDP. So as we know, there's a rapid user base which is using the technology with smartphone adoption, internet penetration, low data rates, and that's where the whole fintech sector and the digital economy is going to get a boom as well. With this report, what we aim to achieve is to have that particular dialogue or the knowledge gap which is there in the market, because what is happening is the policy makers, the entrepreneurs, the technology is growing very rapidly. How do you fill in the gaps? And that's where we want to work together to understand that there's some credible information which is available out there so that people can take knowledge from this. There's some very key government initiatives which have been going on. For example, most of you would be aware the UPI expansion plan, where multiple countries starting from UAE to Malaysia to Singapore have started using the whole UPI technology as well. So government is playing that key enabler facilitation where the Indian fintech ecosystem can be taken to the world as well. We also, as you must be aware, the recently held SEO summit in Uzbekistan, where there's been dialogue and engagement in using local currency for settlements. And that's where, the fintech startups can come and play a very critical role to increase the already growing export-import market with especially the SEO region and other countries as well. with the GIFT City coming up in Gandhinagar, there's a huge focus in building up the whole infrastructure space so that we can compete with the likes of Singapore, UK and other countries as well. The government has also set up multiple joint working committees. We have a dedicated committee with Singapore, with UK, where the idea and the objective is that dialogue happens between the government and favorable policies are created which will enable flow of knowledge and investments between both these countries. This has been going on for a while, and Invest India has been facilitating this dialogue. And with the launch of this particular report today, we aim to have this continuation in this particular engagement, and we hope after reading the report, we'll be able to hear your insights as well. Thank you so much, and I look forward to our panelists to hear more views about how we can take this further as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Varun. Before inviting the other panelists on the podium, I will request for a 2-minute photo session where we'll request all the other panelists to please unravel the report for the launch. To all the backbenchers also here, members from both the team for their efforts and inputs on the report. Thank you very much, everyone. Next, I would like to invite on stage Ms. Reena Dayal to share her insights while she's been working on the quantum space, how we can, leverage her previous experience on that front, on the applications of quantum, in specifically in financial services. So, over to you, Reena, ma'am.
Thank you. And I think it's an honor and privilege to be here. And I'm very excited about talking about quantum to the, starting that conversation in the financial sector space. Just to introduce QETCI, or the Quantum Ecosystems and Technology Council of India, as was pointed out, it's a Section 8 not-for-profit company. Our sole mission and aim is to enable and accelerate the quantum ecosystem in India. So we work very closely with the government, industry, academia, startups. And we are a 1-year-old organization. In the last 1 year, we've established ourselves, sort of set the conversation going in the tech sector. And I think it's the first time that I or anybody from the Quantum Ecosystems Technology Council is actually speaking to the end user industry forum, right? So I think, and then just to give you a little bit of context, we are recognized as an entity both by the government as well as the private sector. And not only that, if you go and ask somebody in the US and you go through a list within their government as to the quantum institutes around the world, QETCI will figure there, right? So across the world also, we've gained some recognition in the last 1 year. Now, that was for establishing credentials, because many of you would not even know what this entity is. The second important thing to understand is that when we look at quantum, right, and everybody has this idea, okay, something called quantum technology, but what does it really mean? And what we are actually, what it means is that we are standing at the cusp of a revolution. So if you look at the past and you try and remember the stories of when computing started, right? And which the semiconductor-based computing that results in all the devices that we have, the small ones, like the ones we hold in our hands, the mobile phone, to the supercomputers that exist today. All of that is based on classical physics. Engineered on top of that classical physics, you have systems which we chose to be semiconductor based because that seemed like the most promising technology. And then you have this whole era of computing, right? We are talking about fintech today, and it is essentially about computing. If we go and look at where the semiconductor industry is today, right now, we are at the end of Moore's law, which means that we cannot miniaturize the circuits any longer, because beyond a limit, we reach into those distances in the semiconductor which are called quantum distances. And if any of you have studied quantum physics, quantum behavior is very different from classical behavior. So any systems that are built on top of any engineering that you do on top of quantum physics has to be done completely differently. So if you look at the quantum era, today we are at a stage where worldwide there's a lot of investment that is happening. Almost all governments across the world, in the developing countries and many developed countries and many developing countries, have focused energy, committed a lot of money, billions of dollars worth of investment for enabling this technology, because this seems to be the future. So what comes after our current state of technology? It is quantum, right? That's what everybody is envisaging. Now, giving you a little bit of context, India had also made an announcement 3 years ago about investing about more than 1.1 billion USD worth of investment in the National Quantum Mission. And since it's an area which is less understood by people, a lot of people don't understand, and the general perception is that not much is happening, right? While in the larger scheme of things, we are at early stages, but there's a lot happening in India. So the government itself had come out with a Quest program where there was investment done with the, with the various universities and research institutes more than a couple of years ago, and substantial amount of progress has happened. I don't represent the government directly, but I represent the ecosystem, and I have been very closely tracking what has been happening and interfacing with all people with the ecosystem. Very recently, there were announcements. More than 6 months ago, there were announcements made by ISRO as well as Raman Research Institute about the progress in quantum communications. Right. So I think I would say that India has really, to a certain extent, caught up on the quantum communication side, because we're discussing test beds, and test beds are being formulated. So that's good. There is a lot of, recently the Indian Army announced a lab along with QNU Labs, which is also on quantum communications, right, and secure communications. We have been, if you look at the technology industry, several players in the technology industry have started thinking about it a couple of years ago, and many of them have started building teams. There was an announcement by Tech Mahindra a while ago about their quantum-focused labs, makers labs in India as well as in Finland. And then very recent announcement by TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, about coming out with the 3-qubit superconducting qubit-based quantum computer. So these are all positive signs. I think what is really required at this stage in India is a much more focused collaboration between multiple stakeholders, because it's a tough subject. I will not mince words. It requires the best of the best to come together, and nobody has the complete solution by themselves. What do I mean by that? When you look at quantum physicists who go deep into the subject today, they may not understand computing as well. So already in the world, there is a lot of collaboration happening between computer scientists and quantum physics experts. That model is already workable. We have experienced it in India as well, and that works. But as you move forward and you start talking about end industry use cases, and you look at the very imminent threat that is posed by post-quantum, by the challenge that quantum computing brings in. I think it was briefly referred to earlier, when today the whole entire security infrastructure relies on RSA 2048, right? And RSA today is considered unbreakable. So even if you take the world's best supercomputers and you try and break an RSA algorithm, it's going to take thousands of years. So that's pretty stable, pretty unbreakable, and so whether it's national security or whether it's your financial data, you feel secure about that data. Today, we do not have a fully scalable quantum computer. But as you move forward, you will have computers which may be able to break RSA. Now, what does that mean? That means that you don't remember Y2K? Y2K, you all wanted to, we all wanted to make sure everything transitions on that day. Now, you have a Y2Q situation, which means that you don't have a date, but before that date, you have to be ready with alternate infrastructure. So, I'm here today to actually start that dialogue and, partner with a lot of these entities in the financial sector. QETCI intends to partner with different entities in the financial sector and actually help work alongside the government to create the roadmap that may be required. The use cases could be a first step, right? Now, we understand the use cases. We don't understand financial sector very well, but there are lots of experts within this community that could help us, right? So I think we are at a very, I would say that we are at a very positive space in India as well. We are not, behind everybody, as a lot of people, sometimes you might think that. But there's a lot that needs to be done. There are areas where we are definitely don't have certain scenarios very well worked out, and that's what we'll be working towards. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Reena. We've been borrowing the Brownian motion for pricing of options via Black-Scholes-Merton. So there's, of course, a lot more that can be borrowed from physics as well as quantum. With that, I'll invite the last speaker, Shri Harsha Bhowmik, Director, Department of Economic Affairs. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Raghav. I was really nervous, right, when you introduced me. I introduced myself, right, and I never gave him any kind of a write-up to introduce myself. So I was thinking what he will be speaking of, but he took the right words and the right ways to introduce myself. So I am Harsha Bhowmik. Again, reintroducing myself. I am working as a director in digital economy and fintech in Department of Economic Affairs. So as a last speaker, it's always difficult, right, to wrap up this session after this August. Industry leaders have already spoken on this subject. They are the SMEs, they are taking it forward. And that too from the government side. I think I will not make it a long speech, or the intention is to make it crisp and short, because anyways government are supposed to listen and hear the industry rather than telling them what to do and what not to do, right? So in that sense, I just wanted to I glanced through the report. I'm actually traveling, and between minutes and meetings, right, I was going through the report, and how lovely the report is, because whenever you see some 500-page report, right, it's a normal inertia that you will go through it. You don't want to read through it, or you just glance through it, right? So the report was the most promising thing I liked about the report is it's a crisp one. It's very short, crisp, gives perfectly the right words and the right things which needs to be discussed. Obviously, this report is 1.0, I'll say, and there should be a 2.0 of this report. And I'm pretty sure that writers who have already taken this task of generating such kind of reports, right, knows what are the points which needs to be taken care of. But from the perspective, and then I think I should have stated the disclaimer at the beginning that this is, whatever I'm speaking here is on the personal capacity, and this is nothing from the government or the views of the government, right? So, but saying that, I just wanted to say, like, I wanted to just stress on 3 points. Like, how emerging technologies is important for the government. Next, like, why the emerging technologies are important for the financial service sector. And last, what are the key takeaways of the next steps, right? So, in terms of, like, why the emerging technologies is key for the government can be taken from the fact, like, what we have gone through for the last 2 years, right? We have gone through 2 shocks. One of the shocks are the pestilence or the COVID-19 pandemic which we had. And the second shock was this man-made kind of a disaster which we are writing, geopolitical disaster right now we are seeing. So this did not have for any of the policymakers any of the script to handle this kind of a situation. This is like a century kind of a phenomena which has happened. But if you see the results after this 2 years, I think we have done fairly well. And the basic reason is because of the different kind of self-reliance, innovation and the transformation DNA which we have in our economy as well as in our industry. And here the emerging technologies takes a very key aspects. Because of the forwardness of the technology and of the youth and the population which we have, we were able to go through this past calamity with certain due respect, with certain rigidity and solidarity in the whole of all of the economy. And in fact, if you know the data, I think most of the economists and most of the economic bodies are actually projecting around 6.5% to 7.5%, in between 6.5 to 7.9, I guess, in the GDP growth in the next 1 year or so. So saying that, right, so I'll also just take two, I think, very important data, right. In terms of the emerging technologies in 2018, the global market was around 350 billion. And then I think in 2025, the global market is projected to around 3.2 trillion. So you can see the opportunity in front of us. And as a growing, developing country with the growth, the economic growth which we're having, I think there is no question about why not we exploit this opportunity. And it is the responsibility for every one of us to jump into this bandwagon and have the correct amount of investment, as well as the policy intervention, as well as the no intervention. So obviously no intervention is also a policy in itself, right? To take this growth forward. Right. So in terms of what is the contribution which we are looking at, I think as part of some of the reports which we have is like around 800 billion to 1 trillion of digital economy impact because of emerging technologies in around maybe in the next 2025 or 2026. That's the roughly period which we have. But is how India's high technology exports will be roughly around 10.3%, and ICT exports should be about 2%. That is as per the available data. Now, adoption of how do this adoption of emerging technologies can improve trade's competitiveness? This is through economies of scale, the scope, and the speed of the trade. And it also affects every value chain from the pre-production, production, and production, right? And improve the access for the domestic firms to the new export market, and also exposes the domestic consumers to new products and producers. So firms in financial and manufacturing sectors have been some of the early adopters, right, of these emerging technologies, including the AI, IoT, big data, and blockchain. Now, saying that, right, why emerging technologies is so important for the financial service sector? I'll just right now say that the financial service sector and the emerging technologies are the key backbone of our economy, right? It is also depends on the key well-being of every citizen of which is living in this country. And in terms of like what is the USP which is actually driving this whole economic growth, I think one of the there are 4 key factors. The first factor is we have a rising income. The second factor is we have a demographic dividend. Most of us, like 60% of our population by 2030 will be under 35. So we have already a population which is well versed with adapting to digital technologies. So that is some kind of advantage which most of the countries doesn't have, right? And then I think the third at the...
Just have 2 more minutes.
Oh, 2 of me? Okay, so I've been warned that I have 2 more minutes, so I'll wrap it up very quickly. So I think the next 2 factors will be like the digital public infrastructure which from the government which are trying to build. Everyone is aware of most of the India Stack story. I will not repeat it, but from the India Stack story, you will already have the consent layer already built, the paperless and the cashless layer on the UPI already built, and the most important, I think, another layer which is being built on the account aggregation side, which will be launched pretty soon. So this digital public infrastructure is also improving on the economy side. And then obviously the last and the foremost thing is the new products which these emerging technologies are actually enabling us. So based on that, I think we are on the right path in terms of the demand and supply to take these emerging technologies in the path of economic growth. So saying that, I think another important aspect which the leaders have already touched upon, right, which we also wanted to touch, right, this emerging technologies is like a disruptive element in the whole economy, right? So in terms of the disruptions which it creates is also a prerogative for any of the policymakers to get the right intervention done. But for the policymakers to do the right intervention and to there are some of the architectural aspect of policymaking which has to be taken care, which are mostly relies on, right, it has to be, what are the avenues of consumer protection, right? What are the avenues of monitoring? Now, if you take Web 3.0, it's a fantastic technology, nobody is debating about that. From the layman's term, it's like blockchain on Web 2 on blockchain. Maybe that in the kind of simplification you can do, although there will be much more complexities. But in terms of blockchain itself is a distributed ledger system, and then how do anyone supervise and monitor the system? It is distributed. It is like a democratic system. So there have to be thought process put in, like how it will be the financial stability, the resilience, right? Those all aspects can be actually handled or addressed through this Web 3.0 kind of a technologies. So these all facets, I think I will just conclude on saying, right, these all facets has to be taken care, and a lot of good minds has to be going in terms of how to create a policy out of these new emerging technologies. But I can confidently say, as the words of our Honorable Prime Minister, that the future of fintech and Industry 4.0 will be starting from India and is in India. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. We would like to thank all the panelists for the insightful remarks today, and a huge round of applause for all the contributors who've worked immensely on the report. Karishma, Devika from Invest India, Avnish, Neeraj, Ayush, Rudra, Yasha, Debankar, Abhishek, Tanvi, Kanesh, Vignesh, Kalavini from PwC, and of course the teams that supported on the editorial and design, Dion, Rashi, Faiz and Shipra. A huge round of applause for everyone. Thank you very much. And you may kindly scan the barcode for downloading the report. Thank you.